Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And today's episode is another Instagram Live. It's either number 10 or 11. Pretty sure it's number 10, but it doesn't really matter anyway. But what have we got today? We've got 2, 4, 6. It's only 9 questions today, so it could be a bit of a short one, but that's not a bad thing because it's currently 8:30 p.m. and I'm pretty keen to get to bed. And before I do that, I've got to make some changes to the garden show plans because I marked it out today on the ground, just with some spray paint showing where everything's going. And I'm not happy with some of the sizing of it. So I'm going to have to make some tweaks to the design because what I did was I've got some Axon cement sheet cladding, which is 1200 mil wide as like the border around the outside of the garden. So I've kind of tried to make it efficient by like the front either side of the steps is 4.8 meters on both sides. Because that worked out to be 4 perfect sheets. So then you've got the verticals all looking full. So you haven't got any, half or third cuts or, there's no cuts basically. But I'll have to work out how to make it bigger so that it still looks like there's no cuts. But because, just things are a bit tight, which is crazy to think of when it's it's like 10 and a half by 13 meters. But that's what it is because I've jam-packed a lot of in there. But anyone who's got any questions, feel free to chuck them in down the bottom and I'll try and answer them as I see them. So the first question is one I forgot to answer last week from Cascade Landscapes. And he said, what's one material or product that you refuse to use again? So I've got there's so many of these questions that come at a really good time. And this is another one, although it's hard to come at a bad time for this one. So we're still building a Stratco Pergola. It's the first time we built. It's pretty good product in terms of what it does. So it's got the louvers on it. It's about 7.6 meters by 4.2, I think. So there's 2 bays of louvers, and then it's got an automatic rain sensor, so when it rains, the louvers close. So awesome product in that. But when the whole process has been going on for, I reckon it might be 8 months since I ordered at least. So when I ordered it, they said that the manufacturing takes 4 to 6 weeks from when you order it, but you have to pay 100% upfront when you order it. So obviously you want to get the permit before we do that because you don't want to pay for it upfront and then find out for some reason you can't get the building permit for it. So got the permit for it and then ordered it, and like 6 weeks was going to be, I think it was the end of November. So it was going to come in November, build it before Christmas, all good. And there's a pool nearby as well, so it's all ready to swim before Christmas. And then 6 weeks in, I said, where is it? And they said, it's 9 weeks from when you ordered it. So it was due to be delivered on the 21st of December. So that was the first drama. So obviously we finished on the 18th of December, and it takes too long to install it. So there was and then we had to do concrete underneath. So there was no time to install it before Christmas. And it just happens to be that the clients are friends of ours as well. So it just made it doubly worse. And they're also the nicest people in the world. So couldn't do it before Christmas. And then I'm pretty sure it was, So then I got into it early in January. So I was going to build it as soon as I could. One of the clients it was their 40th birthday in sort of late Jan. So I thought, at least we'll get it done before that. I didn't know if they were doing a party or anything, but so we had to get it done before then. Opened up the box and I realised there was a piece missing. So I called up Stratco and said, this part's missing. And they said, is there anything else missing? And I said, I assume not, but you tell me, did you check it before you sent it? And they said, go through everything, make sure that there's no other parts missing because we don't want to be going over this again and send out what you've got missing, and then to find out that there was something else missing. So I said, all right. So I went through it all, and turns out there was a massive amount of stuff missing. Like the louvers weren't even in there, and the whole thing is louvers. So like it was a big couple of boxes, but it turns out there should have been a lot more. So there was probably half of the order was missing that they sent out. So then we got the delivery came out, and also some of the stuff that had come out had been driven on by a forklift, so it was damaged, and some stuff was bent, and so some stuff that had arrived was damaged, and a lot of it hadn't arrived. So that was a bit of a debacle to start with, and then if you fast forward to where we are currently, so it was only supposed to be one delivery and then you install it all. So the last delivery was just supposed to be one piece of flashing, like a 4.2 meter length of flashing, goes on the top, and that would have finished off the entire job. And so that was the 5th delivery, and they sent out the wrong flashing. So there's going to be a 6th delivery for something there should have been one delivery on, and they said make sure you tell us everything that's missing so we don't have to do this again. And they've done it. They've re-delivered 5 times, and we're still not finished. Started it back in, I reckon, August, and it's going to be April before it's finished at the earliest. So the product is good, but the customer, like, they haven't apologized once for the stuff ups. They just basically point fingers at other people. So their accountability is horrendous. The customer service is horrendous. Their communication is no good. So certainly that is a product I will never be using again. I was going to use one at my house, but not a chance. So even though there's not many questions, if I ramble on like that, it'll be a long episode. Dan from Revived Landscapes and Living Walls has got a few questions. What are you most excited about for the upcoming MIFGS show? Firstly, saying MIFGS show is like saying an ATM machine, but I'll let that slide. What I'm most excited about, so I went there today, and that's what I'm most excited about, is seeing all the people there, all the landscapers and the designers and the crew who are involved with building it. That's clearly the best part of it. So just the camaraderie between everyone. Just awesome people there, and it's a fun environment. Like, it can be stressful at times, but there's everyone's already offering each other help if they need it. So that's easily my favorite part of it, is all the people involved with it. I'll go through Dan's other 2 questions. What are you more worried about or stressed about with your display garden? The good thing is I've never been more organised for something in my life than what I am for this garden. Spent a ridiculous amount of hours. Like, I don't know if I've been to bed before 11:30 for a couple of weeks, and that's purely just looking at the design, changing things, working on it, working out what I can do before the show starts, and just thinking about everything, how it's what process is going to go in order of things to build. And so, yeah, spending a crazy amount of time on it, but because I love doing it, it's not tiring at all and not taxing, and it's awesome to think about. So there's, like, hand on my heart, not a single thing I'm stressed about, because I've got that much confidence that we're going to get it finished. Thankfully, the weather looks okay. There might be a day of rain on Tuesday, but even with that, it's not stressing me out if we lose the day, because everyone's going to be in the same position anyway. And then by Thursday, we'll probably have our pergola roof up, so there'll be things we can do underneath there if it rains again. So, yeah. So it's one of those things, you can have a negative experience by doing one of these garden shows if it's all stressful, and then, like, at the end of it, you just collapse in a heap. Whereas I would rather be really organised and enjoy it, because it's a really easy thing to enjoy if you've got time on your side and you're organised. So yeah, it can't always be like that, and that could be, my design might not be as complex as other people's. So being as, like, mine might be a bit vanilla. So being that vanilla kind of design could cost me in, the judging, but at least we're going to build an amazing looking garden and going to enjoy doing it. So, like, I never had any plans on doing too well with the overall scores anyway, because that's not my strength. But yeah, it's an awesome feeling to be doing a big garden like this and not be stressed about it. So, and his last question was, how do you take your coffee? Unfortunately, I don't drink coffee. I've always been waiting to mature, because everyone said, when you get older, you'll like coffee, but I'm not there yet. So I've had one coffee. That was a client, just didn't take no for an answer, and it was horrendous. So yeah, I don't drink coffee. And I say unfortunately, because the amount of times I get asked for one by clients, it'd be good if I could just say yes. But I honestly hate it. So, and the weird thing is, I love a Dare double espresso iced coffee. Favorite drink in the world, I reckon. But that's probably because it's not coffee, it's just pure sugar. I've had a couple of questions come in on the live. So Plummets sounds like a violent person. He's asking about fighting again. Who would win in a fight out of Charlie Albone and Jamie Jury? Probably I would put my money on. Well, that's a good one. Probably Charlie. He's got that English scrapper in him, and Jamie's been out of the bodybuilding stripping game for too long, so he's probably lost some of his strength. So I reckon, and Charlie's probably got the height on him as well. I'll just scroll up on there. And Paul Pritchard has got a question. Where is it? How do you have the energy for this tonight? So, like I said before, because I'm doing something that I love, like a fat kid that loves cake, I could do this forever. And like I've said before, I'm not a big talker, but when I talk about landscaping, I can talk forever because I just love it more than you can imagine. So, extremely grateful that I've found a job like that. Because I know not everyone likes their job, so certainly don't take it for granted. Jones Landscape says, what's your preferred tape measure? I'm a 10-meter Fat Max man, but only buy them on sale. I was actually going to bring one in, but I'm a yellow Stanley, just the cheap one. So it's $11.50. I think I've said it before. They used to be like $7 when I started buying them. So they're going up a bit. But yeah, because they get, like when I was marking out today, it got painted, like spray painted. So landscapers tape measures get damaged around a bit and get dirt and water and dust and all sorts of stuff in there. So you don't want to spend too much on them. I've tried a 10-meter one once, but yeah, getting an extra 2 meters is not going to make much of a difference, but they probably cost a fair bit. So yeah, I'll just buy those ones and never have any drives with them. Jambo has said, should I thatch my buffalo garden this autumn? Wouldn't have a clue, to be honest. I'm not into maintenance at all. I've got fake grass, so we've got a guy, Sean, from, what's his business called? Pure Turf Lawns and Gardens. He does a lot of our maintenance projects, and he is a turf wizard, so he would be the best person to talk to about that. But yeah, we don't do any maintenance, and I've never done it. So like, there's a few people who I've spoken to who have started off in maintenance and then worked into design or landscaping, but we didn't. We tried maintenance at one stage, but that's when I realized you need to have dedicated maintenance people doing it if you're going to do it, because you can make a lot more money doing what you're good at, and we're better at building gardens and getting other people to maintain them. So yeah, I'd just be guessing, and I wouldn't. It'd just be literally like flipping a coin. So wouldn't have a clue. Sorry. Graham Rose has said, I like that color on you, Joel. Thank you. I'd say it's pink. Might show up a bit like salmon on the screen, but it's yeah. When I wore it, I've worn it a couple of times. I was waiting for someone to comment about it, and comes as no surprise that it would be Graham Rowe who did. So Graham's going to be working on Charlie's garden. So that's an interesting move for him, getting a real estate salesman working on his garden. So we'll see how well that goes. Got a couple of, so weird, these questions, some of them show up in a question box rather than in the comments. So Lloyd Sharp and the landscapers guys are one of them. Actually, got one for Steve Lowe. No question, just best of luck next couple of weeks. Huge undertaking and extremely exhausting. Best of luck. So Steve Lowe, I mentioned it last week. The podcast episode he did with Clint Adams from Full Landscape is the best landscaping podcast episode I've ever heard. So can't recommend that highly enough. I'll actually put a link to it in the notes of this episode, which will come out on Thursday. I do this every week. I think of try and say the date, and I can't work out what it is. But it's my son's birthday, so it's the 23rd. So this will come out on the 23rd of March, and I'll put a link to Steve's episode because it's an amazing episode. There's so much value in it. It's insane. And Lloyd Sharp said, how do you balance quotes priorities on jobs? Not sure what you mean. Quotes and priorities on jobs. Please explain. Not sure on that one, Lloyd. Yeah, I can't. Unless you're talking about if you're trying to stick to a budget, what your priorities are. But I would, if it is that in that situation, I just give quotes for all of it, so then the client can pick and choose what they want to use out of that quote. So yeah, so then you give them all the information, and they can decide what their priorities and what they want. But I assume that's not what you mean, Lloyd. So if ask again. I'm a bit fatigued, so it could be me not understanding it properly. So I apologise for that. Lockie Dean said, off the top of your head, who's the best landscaper in Australia? It's obviously an impossible thing to say, but I've always looked up to, like, and also everything I see is on Instagram. So, we only work in Geelong and then do the garden show. And the garden show is not a real representation of landscaping. It's completely different. Like we're doing some pergola posts, and I'm building them out of yellow tongue. So obviously you wouldn't do that in the real life. So I only see stuff in Geelong or on Instagram, and Instagram, you never know what the real situation is. So it's impossible to know. But I've always admired the two that I've admired for the longest time, Greener Visions. So Jaden from Greener Visions, he's been one of the episodes, and Signature Landscapes. And also, what's his name? SJ Landscapes as well. So yeah, those three are all Melbourne based. So that's obviously I'm biased as well, because I see their work more than people in other states. Doesn't mean they're any better than anyone, but they've always done phenomenal work for a really long time as well. So they're the three companies I looked up to the most in the early days. When I say early days, they're probably younger than me anyway, but yeah, they're just three companies. When I started sort of phase 2, wanting to work in the high end projects, they were three of the guys I followed. But you never know who's the best. But I know who it's not, and that's me. But I'll always work on it. Here we go. Lloyd has hopefully expanded on his question. How do you prioritize your quoting while you're on the jobs? Do you try to pull the pin on a quote if you don't feel good about it? Absolutely. So there was a job that we were quoting for Steve Taylor from Cos Design, and I've said a few times, he's my favourite designer. So the designer I want to work for the most. So we were doing a job for him, and it was broke. It was like might be $400,000 quote, I think. And it was broken up into 3 stages. We got the job, and we were doing the first stage, which was only 45 grand's worth. So it was just soft landscaping stuff for the entrance. So it was nothing too fancy. And they were really bad payers. So basically they didn't pay too well. I asked them if they could pay on time, and then they said, we pay on the 1st and the 15th of each month. And that had never been agreed to, but I thought, okay. So the last invoice I sent it on the 8th, and they're 7-day invoices. So it was due on the 15th, and they paid on like the 22nd or something. So even though we'd agreed to the rest of the work, I thought there's no point stressing about getting this job done, because if they're not going to pay well when you're doing like 45 grand's worth of work, imagine when you're doing 300 grand's worth of work. So I basically said to them that the price for the remainder of the work has increased by 15%, but if you pay it on time, the invoice on time, you get a 15% discount. So just sort of saying, pay me on time or I won't do the work. And they were happy for me to not do the work. And I was happy to walk away. And it was a phenomenal project. It would have been probably one of the best we've done, but who knows what sort of stress that would have provided me. So definitely, do walk away. There's been ones where on massive slopes where I've gone out and thought that this would be a nightmare to do. So I've said that to them at the start. So I'll go out there, and then if it's no good, I'll say to them, I'm sorry, I'm not able to quote for you because I can't work on these kind of sites. Like I can, but why would you want to? Like, you might want to help them out, but you're just making things harder for yourself when you don't need to. It's hard enough doing working on a flat ground. It's one of those things you get with experience. Is you're happy to. It's one of those things to saying no. So what you're saying no to taking on work, but also just taking on the wrong kind of job. So I'm wanting to do more detailed stuff as well. So I'd rather take on nicer, complex, detailed projects rather than just things where they're spending money on massive retaining walls that just because you have to retain large amounts of soil. So, don't know if that answers it properly either, but I'm just scrolling down. There we go. Cascade Landscape's got another one. What is a reasonable expectation for apprentices or employees having their own tools? So I think that would depend on how much they're being paid. But I don't have any expectation on any employees or apprentices to have any tools at all. Like I'll provide them with tape measures and all the stuff they should need. I think the employer should provide basically everything that they need. Like we provide shirts and like singlets and jumpers. So basically everything above the waist I'll supply, and below the waist like shorts and shoes they supply. But yeah, I've never expected anyone to have any tools. So I don't like them using their own tools either, just in case they get broken or damaged while they're working on my project. So because then I'll just feel bad about it. So I don't think anyone should have to use their own stuff. If you've got a subcontractor, that could be a different story, depending on what they're doing. But yeah, and it would also depend. Like if you're going to have a long-term subcontractor, that could be handy because you might want to start a new crew. So then you might not have two of every tool. So then it'd be good to have them with their own set of tools. But you want to have that expectation up front so that everyone knows that everyone's on the same page. So there's no like the employer or subcontractor knows what your expectations are with what you're providing. But it just makes it a bit too grey area rather than the black and white, saying we'll provide all the tools, you do the work. And you probably need to work out the tool allowance as well. And I don't know how that works, but yeah, no expectation for me for my guys. Definitely not apprentices, even though I think they get money for it. Rob Waddell said, you mentioned before the plants are your most profitable part of a job. On the flip side of that, what costs your business the most? Labour is what costs my business the most because I quote everything on how fast I would do it. And funnily enough, I'm the only one whose business this is, so no one works as hard as me. So, and obviously I don't expect them to, but that's something that I'm always looking to increase on. Improve on, sorry, just allowing enough time, and it's because I feel like sometimes I'm spending my own money on the client's job. So if something sounds expensive to me, which everything is, then I won't go too high with it. But that's something I need to get out of because it's expensive. But if you don't quote it properly, then I'm the one who pays for their landscaping. So it's definitely something you need to improve on. Apart from that, I lose a lot of money when I want to do something cool, like the first time that I did the mitered travertine steps. And because I'm happy doing that because I love doing that kind of stuff. And then if you get more work out of it, then you know how long it's taken, so you know what you should be charging. So then you can quote accordingly going forward. So if you're trying to get into like doing floating concrete steps or something else, then you might quote it lower to start with, and then so you won't make as much money, but then you'll get more of it and you can make that money back basically. But yeah, definitely allowing enough time to do the work is what costs me the most. Lloyd Sharp's got another question. Do you find the better the work, the worse the client, or has your personal experience with clients changed after taking on the nicer jobs? I find, let's see, which ways is that? The better the work, the worse the client. Now, it can be. Like, it seems like I would say it's definitely very common, the worse the job, the better the client. Like, when you're doing a $10,000 project, and when it's finished, sometimes the clients are the happiest you ever come across, like, because it makes they've scraped up just enough money to be able to get that $10,000 spent. And like you could look at it as the most basic thing you've done in 10 years, but they think it's the greatest thing in the world. So, and then they'll be out there living their life out in their backyard and inviting their friends around, showing them how awesome their landscaping is. But then you can work on a $200,000 project, and their clients, don't treat you all that nice. But I've been lucky that I haven't had any like that. So we've been really lucky with the clients we get. They're all awesome. Like, I honestly can't think of any horrible ones or ungrateful. So everyone's been really grateful. Everyone's been extremely understanding with the amount of time things take to do as well. So since COVID, everything just seems to take longer. Like we're pretty slow at everything anyway, but then since then, it just takes longer on top of that. But no one's been putting any pressure on us, which I'm extremely grateful for. So yeah, and I've done nothing. I suppose there are times when I was going to say I've done nothing to get those type of clients, but there have been times where I'll get a bad vibe on a client, so I won't proceed with quoting it. So yeah, that might be just something that you learn as you go. But I know what you're saying. Like the people with more money seem to get that money by not wanting to spend it, and and the people with less money seem more grateful. But it's just a bit of a what's the word? Can't remember what the word is again. My brain's not working properly. Stereotype, I think. No, I don't think it's stereotype, but kind of like that. It's a bit of something like that where that can happen a bit, but it's not every client. Curve Landscape said, what estimating program do you use? So the program I use is a piece of paper and a pen. So pretty high tech. And then I work out the quote and then write it onto a Microsoft Word document and then print that on my letterhead. Dan said cliche. That is the word I was looking for. Thank you, Dan. But yeah, I don't use any estimating program. But when I've seen the quotes that they spit out, they look a bit impersonal, I find. Like it'll say like paving it'll say 50 square meters of paving, and it has a description, and then it says quantity 1 and then the price. It just seems a bit, I don't know, a bit odd. So I've never liked the look of them, and have never had any issues doing the quoting the old school way that I do it. So well, when I took over the business, like my old boss used to have a Microsoft spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and that's pretty cool. But I never got into using it. So, but that has, you put in how much you charge per hour and how many man hours it is and all the materials, and it works it all out. But yeah, it's a really good spreadsheet, but I just preferred doing it by pen and paper. And yeah, it's probably, I don't know if it's any slower than using one of those programs. You could most of the time I'll type out the description of each element of the quote, but you could copy and paste as well, but it really doesn't take that long. Got a question from Clint Adams. Very Clint. If you're a landscaping product, what would you be and why? So when I saw this, I immediately thought of a bluestone pitcher, because they're pretty rugged, pretty heavy, and been around for a while. So that came to my mind immediately, and I didn't think of any other alternatives. But I do love that question. That's a good one. Now I've got a question from Two Cubs Camping. How do you go about backing yourself with a feature in design that you have never done before? I love doing those because I love unique things about landscaping. I mentioned before my designs are a bit vanilla because I don't do enough of those things, and that's where really creative people are good at them. But you just got to. If you see something that you think is amazing, then if you think it's amazing, that's the best way to back yourself into selling it to a client. And you could if you're not too confident with it, you could do it a bit cheaper than what you otherwise might, so that like doing the crazy paving steps I was talking about before, so that you can do it for almost cost, and then you'll know how much it costs and what you should charge going forward if you do it again. But I would love to do just features and unique stuff like that rather than entire projects. I'd probably want to do entire projects as well, but I love putting unique things in like that, and stuff that's really complex to do as well, just because I like having to think about what you're doing rather than being brain dead and doing the basic stuff. But yeah, if you've got the confidence that you think it's going to be amazing, then you can sell that to your client. Curve Landscape said he uses Excel so he can track the costs, etc., like labor and materials. Yeah, I do in terms of so that's a good way to do it be able to marry the two together, so you can marry your quote together against the costs. So there is job tracking software that does that. But I certainly wouldn't want to pay for anything because I don't see you get the value out of it. But because you can do it in a more caveman-like way, like I do. But I do have a printed out Excel spreadsheet where I keep track of everything. But so again, it's just a pen and paper. But that's one way that you can do it. So that is a good way to do it. At least it's more important. It doesn't really matter what you use, as long as you do keep track of if you're making any money on the job, so that you can fix things if you're not. McMullen Brothers said, how do you go about putting on new employees, and what do you watch out for on new people? So I've said a few times how bad I am at that. So the two guys I've got on have been with me for nearly 8 years and maybe nearly 6. So they started as apprentices, as mature age apprentices, but I've had a lot of employees on since, like the fella who was since Zoki, he started nearly 8 years ago. I think there's been like 30 people on between him and now. So what I look for is just people who are passionate and people who want to do landscaping, not just people who want a job. So I'm probably a little bit too picky for that reason, but I've seen people who just wanted a job, and landscaping is really hard. So you need to have a passion for it. Otherwise you're going to struggle and not want to do the hard work. So like, as much as I love it, there are days that are pretty hard and aren't that much fun, especially in winter, especially if you're where the landscapers are and it seems to rain all the time. So you need to have a passion for it. And also I want them to like I'm very picky on resumes as well. So I don't like the generic ones that all sound exactly the same and it's clearly not them talking about themselves in it. I can't think of any examples, but it just sounds like someone who writes resumes has written their resume, which I understand that that's what people do, but you need those businesses need some sort of kick up the arse, I think, because they're just mailing it in. Because like I see the resumes that come through, and they're all just generic rubbish. Like they use words that no one actually talks like that. So yeah, you can tell straight away if they've written it themselves, and if they haven't written it themselves, then you've got, like, if you're putting on an apprentice, there isn't any experience that's going to matter that they've done to choose them for the job. So you need to, when you're applying for a job, you need to sort of have an application letter and sort of explain why you want the job and explain something about yourself and your personality. Because there's, how else are you going to stand out against other people just if you're doing a generic resume? It doesn't matter what school you went to or anything like that. So you just want to look for someone who matches what's on their resume and has a passion for what they're doing. And I don't know whether to be patient or, like some people say, to hire slow and fire quick. So if they're no good, to get rid of them. But Daly, who's been with me nearly 6 years, after in his first year, he was terrible, and I was close to getting rid of him. And then flicked a switch, and that would have been one of my worst mistakes in business if I had have done that. So, but then there's other people I've kept on for too long, so it's really hard. Having staff is the hardest part of business, and I should probably be a bit more patient than what I am. But it really depends on how the cash flow is going and how stressful you are. So if you're rolling in money, you can afford to be a lot more patient with your employees. But if the money's struggling, then it's a bit more critical that they're making money as soon as possible. Steve Nyland said, do you think there needs to be more trade school type of education options for landscaping? Maybe a TAFE course for people who can't afford to do apprenticeships. I think the way it is pretty good, because the mature age apprentices get more than what an apprentice 20 years or younger do. It's not, they're not rolling in money, but some of the people who are on the mature age apprentices, you can't make any money off them because they're horrendous and they're a mature age apprentice. So they should be better than like an 18 or 20-year-old. So I think that, because when I started, I was a mature age apprentice, but got paid the same as what a 16-year-old would have got paid. So I understand it's hard to do, especially when you're, if you've got your own house or if you're over 30 and you've got a lot more commitments than what someone who's 22 would have, and the 22-year-old might be living at home still. But there can't be a one size fits all that's going to suit everyone. So because the employee, like I understand for the apprentices side of things that you need to earn more money so they can support themselves, but the money has got to come from somewhere, and they get a bit from the government now as well. But the businesses can't pay top dollar for mature age apprentices just because they're mature age and have got expenses. They've got to earn their money as well. So yeah, and takes a bit of a waste of time anyway. And there's no point doing just TAFE. Like you should do that as part of working on site, because you're not going to learn enough working on paving for 6 weeks and then doing something else for 6 weeks. You just don't learn enough doing that, because you need to actually learn by doing things on site. Global Landscapes and Design said, I have a 3-point checklist for hiring an apprentice. If their brothers or father is a tradesman, and do they play sports? So yeah, that'll help with their physicality. But when I got my job, I don't have a brother. My dad's a dry cleaner, and I didn't play sports at the time, so I wouldn't have passed that checklist. So I don't like a checklist because of that reason. But that's one of, again, there's a lot of stereotypes where you'll get a high percentage of people who are going to be good with those, ticking those boxes. But it's just got to be a feel for the right person. Let's go scroll up again. Trevi Pete said, what are the 3 things you would tell every startup landscaping business to have in place outside of the normal things, for example, insurances? That is a good question. I'd make sure that you've got a pay-as-you-go, your bank accounts. So your pay-as-you-go account, and like at least have that one. And if you can, have a GST account as well. So when you get paid by someone, you put 5% into the GST account. Because I said before, even though you have to pay 10% GST, it works out roughly around 5%, I think, because you're claiming some GST back as well. So, and even if you have to pay more or less, at least you've got something in that account. So that, because I would find when I was paying quarterly, you'd find, I seem to have a bit of money in the account, and then all of a sudden you realise it's the end of the quarter. So that money is supposed to go towards your BAS, and then turns out you haven't got any money in the account. So if you can have a bank account set aside to the GST, that's good. And then pay as you go is a definite one. So when you pay your staff, you put their tax into a different account. And then if you get desperate, you've got that money there you can take out to help with cash flow. But if not, you've got that there for when you do your pay as you go. So there's a pretty big popular movement called Profit First. So that does that kind of thing by having separate bank accounts, and they're talking about putting the profit away first into a separate bank account, so then you can worry about the other things later. Yeah, if I had more time, I would think of that of 2 other things, but nothing is coming to mind other than doing that, because I got told that early on and didn't do it, and then when I started doing it, I wished I did it sooner. Another good thing could be to get a mentor. So if you have another landscaper who's kind of in the realm of the area doing the work that you want to do, you could see if they can give you some advice along the way. But that'd be a good way to accelerate your learning, so that you can move towards that, and then they're going to teach you things as well. So that'd be number 2. Can't think of number 3. Last question is from James Zala. Apart from MIFGS, how much do you build in the shed as opposed to on site, and what are the advantages? So you would have seen whenever I've been doing the reels for the garden show, I've been working at the shed, which is like 2 minutes from my house, and it's awesome having that there. We don't do a huge amount there, but we do a lot of painting in there. So we'll get timber battens and put them in there. Even if it's not going to be rainy, at least you've got somewhere where you can paint them, and they're not going to get any dust on them, and they're not on site. So you can, you've got them there. And if it's a rain day, you can go there and do certain things. We're cutting up a lot of pavers for our driveway at my place, so that has been getting done at the shed. I was thinking of getting the forklift so that I can get pavers and cement and all sorts of bits and pieces delivered there, and then we can easily load it up onto the truck. But haven't had any room because I've got heaps of garden show stuff there. But yeah, having that has been awesome, and especially the yard as well. So when we've got certain plants left over or pavers, we can store them there, and then they'll still be there in 5 years. But yeah, if I was moving, I'd want to have a yard as well, because it's good to have that outside section for plants, like if you want to grow them on or whatever. But yeah, it's been really good. And then on rain days, you can plan to do things. So if there's something that, like if you know rain's coming, you can organise things that can be done in the shed, like staining or painting or cutting timbers. When we've made the pool fence with the copper running through the vertical timber battens, we set up 3 drill presses in the shed, and we were drilling all the timber battens. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do in there, and it's just helpful to do it undercover and offsite as well. And yeah, obviously you can store trailers and trucks and machinery and all sorts of stuff in there. So yes, it's had 9 questions, but it's turned into a pretty decent episode. So this will be coming out on the 23rd of March. And so that'll be the 4th day of the garden show, and I'll be at home on that day because it's my son's birthday. So I'm not working that one. And then we'll do one again, hopefully. So we'll do one again next week, which will be the 3rd last day of the garden show build. So hopefully things are going well, and I will do it. If we don't do it, it means things aren't going well, and I'm working too late to get back in time. So fingers crossed we'll be doing this again next week, but I'll put the question box up again during the week. Thank you very much for everyone who's submitted a question again, and also asking during the live. And we'll be pretty active on the socials during the garden show, so keep an eye out for that, and we'll see you next week. So actually, I forgot to do it again, but the episode out this week will be Charlie Allbone as well, which is a cracking episode. He's awesome to talk to. So yeah, we'll see you then.